To start this project, create some RCCS host walls by pressing the Wall button. Then delete any unwanted walls from the project. The remaining host walls can then be resized to fit the outer boundary of the 2D reference sketches in both elevations 1 and 3 using the Align tool or by selecting and stretching the wall edge shape handles. The next step is to split the Elevation 1 host wall horizontally into 4 separate host walls, which will allow for grids to be much more easily added and later edited if required. The easiest way to add grids is to first isolate the reference sketch as well as any of the host wall segments, and then add the longest edge-to-edge grids first, followed by any grid segments, working from the outer grids to the innermost grids that trim in between. The grid tool will almost always automatically and accurately snap the grid onto a reference sketch line. This grid snapping will occasionally fail, but is easy to fix by using the Align tool to correctly locate the grid onto the reference line. Now, repeat the same process with the upper cabinet host wall by once again isolating the reference sketch along with the upper host wall and snapping the grids exactly over the reference sketch lines. The center host wall will be used to host a custom stretcher wall tile splashback. After isolating the reference sketch and the host wall, start by adding the horizontal edge-to-edge grids first. Once the horizontal grids are in place, the 2 main vertical stretcher pattern grids can be created and then simply copied across the host wall to complete the custom tile splashback. Select a vertical grid and activate the Add Remove Segments toggle button to add alternating grid segments to complete the main vertical grids. Select both of the newly created vertical grids and copy them across the center host wall, snapping them to their respective 2D reference sketch lines. The ability to copy multiple repeating grids simultaneously is one of the most powerful features of using the curtain grid system and can greatly improve design creation speed and efficiency. To manually assign cabinetry components, simply enter a depth value into the RCCS data entry box. Press Enter to accept the value, and then proceed to select the various component types from the drop-down menus and apply the types to the individual host panels in the design. If you are new to Revit or RCCS, it may be useful to isolate the host walls you wish to work with in this step to make it easier to see the host panels without the reference sketch in the background. Repeat the same process to assign cabinetry types to the base cabinet panels, while changing the depth value when it's required. It's good practice to assign the cabinetry types with the same depth value sequentially, and only change the depth value for individual components when needed. Assigning and changing cabinet types can also be performed in 3D mode without the need to switch back to 2D mode. This can save a lot of time that would otherwise be wasted while waiting for the 3D model to regenerate. The quickest and easiest way to assign tiles to the blank tile panels is by using the populate function. Simply isolate the center host wall, enter a tile thickness into the data entry box, and then activate the populate function to automatically assign the tiles. With Elevation 1 now complete, the Split tool can be used within Elevation 3 to divide the base cabinet panels from the upper rack shelf assembly. After splitting is completed, delete the unwanted center host wall from the design, leaving only the upper and lower host walls in place. It's now time to add the grids to the remaining host walls in Elevation 3. First, isolate the reference sketch and the lower host wall. Add the longest edge-to-edge grids first, followed by the segmented grids, following the same grid process that was used in Elevation 1. Zooming in closer while placing grids can help the grids snap to the reference line if needed. Use the Align tool to bring any offset grids into alignment with their respective sketch reference lines. To complete the grid placement process for Elevation 3, isolate the top host wall and the reference sketch. Then place all the vertical and horizontal edge-to-edge grids first. Use the Revit copy function to speed up the grid placement process. Multiple grids can be selected and copied simultaneously by snapping them to the underlying reference sketch lines. Finally, add the remaining segmented grids and then use the Add Remove Segments tool to fill in the grid segments to match the reference sketch lines. The rack frame shelf grids are always placed above where the horizontal metal frame will be generated. The RCCS rack frame make function will automatically detect these grid lines and set the generated 3D shelf components in between the 3D metal frame. Once again, use the Revit copy function to copy complex grid segments rather than repeating a complex grid segment process. Before starting the rack frame function, the upper host wall must be isolated from the rest of the design. The RCCS-28 rack frame function allows the user to auto-assign rack frame components in 2D mode by first entering a 0 value and then executing the rack frame function. Finally, isolate the base cabinet panels, then manually assign the cabinet components using the same process used with Elevation 1 by first entering a depth value, selecting a component type, and clicking a host panel to assign the type. To generate the RCCS 3D model, first activate a 3D view. Then press the 2D 3D toggle button to process the 3D cabinetry geometry. All of the views will be generated automatically, including all the 3D geometry as well as 2D hidden line work and opening arrows in both plan and elevation views. Please note that the orientation of the elevation opening arrows can be reversed at any time if your drafting standards require. Let's quickly change the base cabinet's material to wood, and then add some grout between the splashback tiles to complete this design. To add the tile grout to the splashback tiles, activate the mullion function. Select the RCCS tile grout mullion type. Activate the All Grid Lines toggle button. And finally select the center curtain wall to place the grout. Using any combination of the split and grid tools together is a powerful and easy to edit method for creating any type of cabinetry system with RCCS.